Good morning. This morning I'd like to talk about the news about Russia. Russia's Putin and Turkey's Erdogan set to meet after damaging rift. Now, one of the main reasons I wanted to talk about this and use CNN as the source for this, and you could see this, of course, as always, in the description box. The reason I'm using CNN is because the Google leads you to the CNN original title of this piece, which is Putin and Erdogan set to meet after spat. How condescending is that? Putin and Erdogan only had a little bit of a spat, folks. You know, Turkey shooting down a Russian plane was just a little spat. Do you see how condescending the West is? Does it hit anybody as to how this does no good for our relations with one of the most powerful countries in the world, Russia? Russia and Turkey are speaking again, I guarantee you, because Turkey doesn't particularly like the way they're being treated by NATO, and an indication of how condescending the Western media is, and I imagine people like the great, glorious president. It's just an indication right there with its original title, which they changed the title, but the original title of this was Putin and Erdogan set to meet after spat. Now the title is Russia's Putin and Turkey's Erdogan set to meet after damaging rift. Yeah. I guess they even realized how condescending, arrogant it was. We live in such an arrogant country with such an arrogant leader. And trust me, the other two that are running for president aren't going to be any better when it comes to relations with Russia and with the absolute hubris, the great American hubris. St. Petersburg, Russia, CNN. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is traveling to the Russian city of St. Petersburg for a face-to-face meeting with his counterpart, Vladimir Putin. It would be the first time the two strongman leaders have met since Turkish interceptors blasted a Russian warplane out of the skies over Syria in November. The incident, in which one of the air crews was killed and parachuted from the aircraft, provoked a diplomatic firestorm, with furious Kremlin vowing retribution. A second Russian serviceman was killed trying to rescue the other crew members on the ground. Today's loss, quote, today's loss for us was like a stab in the back delivered by accomplices of terrorists, unquote, President Putin said on state television at the time. Quote, it will have serious consequences for Russians' relations with Turkey, unquote, he promised. Turkey feels the pinch. He wasn't kidding. As well as blocking trade ties with Ankara, banning the import of foodstuffs from Turkey, Putin also struck at the Turkish tourism industry, halting charter flights that carried millions of Russians to Turkish resorts. Visa-free travel to Russia was canceled for Turks, and Turkish workers were asked to leave, their visas revoked. The Kremlin's retribution also got personal. Russian defense officials called an unprecedented news conference to reveal satellite and spy plane video of what they said were oil shipments to Turkey from ISIS-controlled areas of Iraq and Syria. Defense officials told journalists they believed the family of President Erdogan were intimately involved in illegal trade and were profiting from it. President Erdogan strenuously denied the allegations. For months, it seemed the bitterness between Putin and Erdogan would never heal. A battle of wheels between two autocratic hardliners at odds over Syria. Desperation. But then suddenly something changed. The Turkish leader unexpectedly moved to heal the rift with the Kremlin, writing a letter expressing, quote, regret to the family of the pilot who was killed in the shootdown. Quote, Turkey's attempt to restore ties to Russia was driven by desperation, unquote, says Fatih Hankara, Turkey specialist at the Chatham House think tank in London. Quote, Turkey needed to restore economic and trade ties to Russia. Turkey needs Russian tourists to flow back to the Turkish resorts. Turkey also needs Russia to try to restore some of its lost influence it once had in Syria, unquote, he told CNN. It seems to have worked. Within days of the Erdogan letter, the foreign minister of the two rivals were meeting in the Black Sea resort of Sochi, and Putin was lifting sanctions, beginning what he said was a process of normalizing trade ties. Coup opportunity. Then the situation took a dramatic turn, with events in Turkey giving Erdogan rekindled ties with Putin unexpected significance. A failed coup in Turkey gave way to a widespread crackdown by Erdogan and his opponents. Many Turks believe their allies in the West had failed to condemn the coup attempt harshly enough and were too critical of the mass arrest. For Turkey, the détente with Russia was now an opportunity to display its strategic options. Turkish officials deny that they are turning their backs on the West, but Erdogan's cordial trip to Russia, a nation at odds with the West on a host of issues from Syria to Ukraine, may give Turkey's allies pause for thought. And amid Ankara's strained relations with the West, the Kremlin also seeks an opportunity to win over a NATO member, said Alexander Schuman of the U.S.-Canada Institute in Moscow. Quote, to increase divisions within the Western community and in NATO is one of the purposes and one of the goals designed by Russia, unquote, he added. So this is a serious issue. Turkey and Russia looks like they're going to be allying themselves. The West has turned its back on Turkey. Look, I'm not even going to get into the goods or bads of this coup attempt as far as what they have done, Erdogan has done to crack down on these people. Turkey is not exactly considered the most enlightened group of people by the West to begin with. The West usually turns a blind eye to a lot of stuff. But the West, if Russia and Turkey ally, and it looks like this is where it's headed, if Russia and Turkey ally, the West won't just ignore it. That depends, of course, on who the president is, the next president is. Turkey and Russia, from their standpoint, needs to be allies. And if Turkey allies with Russia, then that's not going to be too favorable for us here in the West. But let's start, Westerners, by not talking about these people as though they're children. Remember, Putin and Erdogan set to meet after spat. If you don't think I'm right, type in Putin to meet Erdogan, which is what I typed in to Google, and you'll find it. That was the original title of this piece 4 hours ago. The hubris of this country will be its downfall. Hail Eris!